Today's date is April 15, 2014. The time is approximately 9:31 a.m. This is the video deposition of Father Jerome Kern. Will counsel please identify themselves for the video record?
For the plaintiff, Doe, Jeff Anderson.
For the plaintiff, Doe, Mike Finnegan.
For Father Kern, Paul Eng.
It's okay, I'll be able to hear you.
John Gunderson for the Archdiocese.
Court reporter, please swear in the witness.
Raise your right hand, please. Do swear the testimony you're about to give relative to the cause now under consideration shall be the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes.
You may proceed.
Father, would you please state your full name for the record?
Jerome C. Kern.
You are a priest of the Archdiocese of St. Paul, Minneapolis,
Yes.
correct? And you have been ordained a priest of the Archdiocese of St. Paul, Minneapolis since 1966, correct?
Yes.
Did you review any materials in preparation for this deposition today?
With my attorney, we went through things.
What materials did you look at?
Well, the priest file.
Well, he's asking if you looked at documents.
Yes.
I believe it. I believe the
Yes.
question is whether you reviewed actual documents.
No.
Did you look at any documents at all in your pertaining to your file, for example?
No.
Have you ever seen your file?
No.
Have you ever, Father, been interviewed by any law enforcement agency or police officer concerning your conduct as a priest towards children?
No.
To your knowledge, has your conduct towards children as a priest ever been reported to any law enforcement agency?
No.
In your estimation, since 1966, how many kids, while working as a priest, have you engaged in sexual conduct with, where you touched the genitals of or engaged in some sexual contact with the kids?
Well, that's such a general question. I don't know how to answer it.
Well, let me put it more simply to you. Since 1966, as a priest, how many different times have you sexually abused a child under your control?
I never saw anything myself in terms of sexual abuse. And I've given hugs, to young people. And so like the AM.
I'm just asking the number now. Let's listen to my question. Okay, since 1966, while working as a priest, how many different kids have you touched the genitals of, where you laid your hands upon their genitals? How many in number?
Skin to skin? None.
Okay. How many different kids, while working as a priest, have you engaged in any sexual contact with? Now, sexual contact is where, just a moment.
I don't understand.
Sexual contact is where you take your hand or any part of your body and place it against the genitals or the buttocks of any minor.
Well, with clothes on, you're talking about.
Clothed or unclothed?
Oh,
Sexual contact.
okay.
Just give me a number. How many?
I don't know. Very small.
More than 20?
Oh, no.
More than 10?
No.
Less than 10?
Yes.
Less than 5?
AM thing? Well, I have to think.
Just give me a number, your best estimate, since you've been a priest, of the number of kids under your control that you engaged in some sexual contact with. Give me your best estimate of the number.
Well, under 5, certainly. And
When was the last time you did that?
it's so vague, I don't even know. I need something specific to jiggle my mind.
Tell me, as best you can remember, the last time you engaged a child while you're a priest in some sexual contact. Last year, the year before?
No.
When was the last time then?
I don't know, 30 years? That's so long ago. 35 years?
So you stopped doing that at some point in time, Father?
Oh, yes.
What made you stop?
Well, the lawsuit, of course, with AM, and I just gradually realized that you cannot give these hugs, to anybody, really. And so I don't know a point in time, if that's what you're asking, but that was just a gradual thing I learned.
So it sounds like there's two things that made you stop.
Yeah. Go ahead.
And the first is you say you realized you can't give these hugs. Is that one of the things?
Yes, right.
And that was a realization you came to on your own?
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay.
Right.
And then it sounds like the second thing that you just told us that made you stop was the lawsuit with AM. AM is a youth that sued you?
Right.
Mr. Eng, would you hand Father Kern the Doe list? And we've marked this, Father, as Exhibit A. This is a confidential and by agreement sealed list of a number of individuals whose names we will not use, but who we will identify only as John Does by number. You gave an initial for AM, and I'm going to have you write on this exhibit. Oh, okay. Look at John Doe 15. Is that the AM you're referring to?
Yes.
Okay. And are you aware that that individual who you referred to as AM has gone public with the claims of sexual abuse of him by you? Are you aware that he's made that public?
I don't know what you mean by public. The lawsuit was public, I think. I mean.
Yes. So you know what? You know that his name is Al Mishad?
Yeah.
Okay. He is a name who we will use here because he has chosen to be public concerning what he has alleged you did to him and how it was handled. So we have no problem using his name. So just so we are clear then, it's your testimony under oath today that there are no kids that you have abused sexually as a priest since you sexually abused AM or Al Mishad. Is that your testimony?
the names on this list here?
No. I'm talking about time.
It's the time thing.
Yeah.
I get confused.
I was trying to ask you, Father, the last time you engaged in any sexual contact or the touching of genitals of any of these kids while you were a priest. And I thought I heard you say the last one was Al-Mishad. Is that your testimony first? He was the last in time.
I don't know the answer. That's why I'm trying to think who else. You know, because I don't even remember that date of L. It's hard for me to.
Okay, why don't you on exhibit, you want this to be, on this exhibit F, why don't you just write down the names of the kids that you did sexually abuse or touch the genitals of while you were a priest? That you recall.
Well, yeah.
Just write it down.
Can I use this?
No.
Oh, I can't use this?
That you,
Start with those.
that you remember, Father. For now, don't look at that list. That's the list that we prepared.
Yeah.
I want you to turn that list over and use your own memory at this point in time. Not look at that list. Don't look at Exhibit A. Turn that over. Okay, now tell me the name, write down the names of the people, the kids, who you engaged in sexual contact that you can remember and identify by name.
Let's see. I'm sorry. What are we talking about? I just forget the names. Jero. Who are criticisms? I need help with the memory.
Okay, if you have no ability to recall any of those names right now, we'll move to another line of question, and then if your memory gets if your memory gets refreshed, we'll help you do that. Do you remember the first time, the name of the first individual that you ever, first kid that you ever engaged in sexual abuse of as a priest? Do you remember that kid's name?
Oh, yes, Hutmaker.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
So
Well,
Hutmaker would be done.
Okay, now, here's what we have to do. Don't use that name. Because he's been public, there's no harm in you using the name. But we're going to be using the list that you have Exhibit A to identify any other names. So do not give me any other names on this record, okay?
Just don't say them out loud. You can write them on exhibit.
Don't say them out loud. You can write it on that exhibit. So write that name on the exhibit.
Hutmaker.
Yes. Okay. Okay. Do you remember the first names of any of these kids who you sexually abused? Yes or no?
Well, I think it was James, something like that. James.
Okay. But no, the question is, do you remember the first names? And you gave me the name of one of them. So do you remember any of the other first names without giving me their names?
Without saying their names out loud, just a yes or no question. Do you remember any first names? And then if you do, he's going to ask you to put them on the list
Oh.
without saying their names out loud.
You want me to?
Write down any first names. Do you know of any first names besides those two?
Oh, besides those two. I need help.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I just.
Let me ask you this, Father. Since 1966, and you became a priest, from that point in time to the present, have you ever been concerned that you would be arrested by the police for what you did to these kids?
No. Because I thought it was at that time, I thought it was appropriate. You know, now I realize it's not. But
when in time, Father, did you first realize that what you did to these kids as a priest was a crime that could send you to prison? When in time did you first realize that what you did to any of these kids was a crime that could send you to prison?
I object to the form of the question and on foundation grounds, but answer it if you can, Father.
well, I never did. I thought it was appropriate to wrestle, to hug, someone. I grew up doing that, and see, I never thought of it as sexual. That's the difference, myself, I'm told, I never thought of anything as sexual. And I thought it was legitimate recreation, and whether it was, putting your arms around someone, and, like in football we did all the time, and, or, pretend wrestling, I never really wrestled with anybody in my life, competitively. But just, we always called it horsing around when I was young. Horsing around, jostling, and, spraying water. And I always thought it was okay. It's only when, there was an objection or, the lawsuit, and I realized, you cannot do anything like that.
When did you realize or were told by anybody that it was wrong or that it was harmful and you cannot do that?
Nobody.
Has any official of the Archdiocese, from the Archbishop that you first were ordained under, Byrne, to Archbishop Roach, to Archbishop Flynn, or to the current Archbishop Neinstadt, or any of those officials working under them, from Father O'Connell to Father McDonough, ever told you that what you did to these kids as a priest was a crime?
No.
Have any of the officials of the Archdiocese, either those identified for you or any others, since your ordination and since information first surfaced concerning a complaint about you in 1969, ever ever told you that you should not do that or repeat that?
No. And
So the realization that this was wrong basically came to you that made you stop it, and not based on something else somebody else said to you, correct?
yeah, nobody in authority, yeah.
And as a priest, you've always been under the authority of the Archbishop, correct?
Yes,
And the one that ordained you, and then all of his successors to the present.
yes,
And you remain under the authority of the current Archbishop then.
yes.
And you were actually removed or asked to resign from active ministry in 2002, correct?
Yes,
And the Archbishop, that was then Archbishop Flynn?
yes,
And at all times, the Archbishop has been your boss, effectively,
yes.
correct? Did anybody from the Archdiocese or any of those officials ever suggest to you that you could go to jail for what you had done to these kids by touching their genitals and engaging in sexual contact with them?
No,
So you've never worried about going to jail, have you?
no, I really haven't.
Before 2002, had you, Father, ever been restricted or limited in your ministry or prevented from being around kids by the Archbishop or any of the Archbishops or any of the Archbishop's advisors?
No,
When was the first time you were ever restricted, if at all, from your ability to be around kids as a priest?
never.
Look at the John Doe list, Exhibit A, and now run down the names of those people and see if you recognize any of those names without stating them.
Without stating the name?
Without stating the name, but look at the list and then identify by number if you abused any of those kids listed as Does 1 through 19 and 26. And then if you did, state the Doe number, and then I will ask you. But don't state the name. Okay, do you see the list?
You said a lot of questions there.
Okay, look at the list. On the left-hand side,
yeah.
you see Doe numbers, right?
Right,
Look at the right-hand side. It lines up.
right, names.
You see John Doe 1. Do you see that name?
Mm-hmm.
Yes?
Yes,
Okay. And then you say, at the bottom, you see John Doe 26. Yes?
yes,
And you see that name to its right? Don't say the name.
mm-hmm.
Yes?
Yes,
Okay. And that is the plaintiff in this case. So don't say his name, but I'll be referring to him as John Doe 26. Understood?
Mhm.
Okay. Now, look at those names, Father. And without stating the names, look at and identify the numbers that correspond to the names of the kids that you remember having abused.
can I ask something first? Or?
Sure.
I'm not always sure what abuse means. Yeah, that's where I hesitate to.
Let me say abuse for purposes of this question is where you at any time took your hand while a priest and laid it upon the genitals or the buttocks of any of these kids who were minors while you were a priest.
With clothes on. Or,
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
With or without clothes.
Yeah.
We call that sexual contact.
Oh, I see. I don't know all those terms. Okay.
Okay, now look at the numbers and see what numbers correspond to the names you can identify as kids you did that to. And give me the numbers, if you can.
2. Brent Johnson. Can I say more than a number? I mean,
Not for this question.
Oh, okay.
Just give me the numbers.
because there's a misspelling this way.
That's okay. We'll get that corrected.
11, 15, and that's it.
I'm going to direct your attention to Doe 26. Do you recognize that name?
No.
He reports that you took him to your bedroom at Our Lady of Grace. Do you remember taking any kids to your bedroom at Our Lady of Grace?
No.
Where was your bedroom at Our Lady of Grace?
At the rectory.
How many priests lived at that rectory? At that?
2.
Okay. Yourself and who else?
Custodio, Father Custodio.
And Father Custodio was somewhat ill at that time, was he not? At the time he lived there with you?
Well,
Oh,
for a bit, but mostly well, most of the time.
excuse me, I might have been mistaken. I think it was Baglio that was somebody else. Do you remember Father Baglio?
Oh, yes,
Was he at Our Lady of Grace?
yes,
Okay. Was he ill?
sometimes.
Did you have your own bedroom at Our Lady of Grace?
Yes.
And where was that in relation to the bedroom used by Father Custodio?
No, Custodio was at Minnetonka,
Okay.
not Lady of Grace.
So at Our Lady of Grace was it was Father Baglio that was there, correct?
Yes,
And it was Father Baglio that was somewhat ill during the time that you were there, correct?
yes, yes,
And he wasn't able to minister very much and do the ministerial duties, so they fell upon your shoulders, correct?
yes.
Do you deny ever taking any kids to your bedroom at Our Lady of Grace?
Yes.
John Doe 26 has claimed in this suit that at the age of 12 or 13, he went to you for counseling. Did you counsel kids at Our Lady of Grace?
No,
Never?
no.
Isn't it a part of your job to counsel those that seek you aid, comfort, guidance, and advice?
Well, I'm not a counselor. I never, of any kind, professional counselor. Yeah, even with adults, like people would ask for, like marriage counseling, and I would never. I'm not a counselor type, and certainly not with young people.
Well, let's use a different word. Isn't it correct that youth would often seek you out for help and guidance, spiritual and otherwise?
Well, not much of anything. Yeah, I was so busy at administering. I didn't do counseling as such.
Well, you provided aid and comfort to those in need when they sought you out, did you not?
Well, yes.
And when you say you're busy administering, that means busy ministering, does it not?
Yes.
And one of the things you did as a minister, as a reverend, as a Catholic priest, was to hear confessions.
Yes.
That was both of kids and adults, correct?
Yes.
And they were required to go to you for confession, were they not?
Well, I think required is too strong a word. Nobody had to go to a sacrament. I mean, at least in my ministry, that was true.
In this case, Doe 26 has made the claim that in your bedroom at the Rectory of Our Lady of Grace, he was referred to you by his mother for some problems he was having. Do you remember helping some kids for problems they were having when you were at Our Lady of Grace? And then seeking you out for help?
No.
Do you deny ever having done that to any kids? Helped them when they sought you out?
I'm trying to think of an example, and I can't.
Well, let me see if you have any memory of this. Doe 26 has alleged that you took him after he was referred to you by his mother to your bedroom, and in it you laid your hands upon his genitals and caused him to have his first orgasm. Do you have any memory of having done that to any kid?
No.
At any time?
Yes.
Do you deny that?
Yes.
He reports that you told him that if he said anything about that he wouldn't be believed because he was already in trouble for drinking. Do you remember telling that to any kid or this kid?
Nope.
Do you remember a kid being sent to you by his mother because he was in trouble for drinking?
No.
This Doe 26 reports there were the next two times this was repeated when he went to you for problems that he was having, including drinking, and that happened two more times. Do you deny that happened?
Yes.
He reports that on two occasions when he had gone to Mass alone, you made him go into the basement of the church school, into the cafeteria. Did you ever take any kids into the church school cafeteria?
No.
Ever?
I can't recall it,
Do you recall this kid or any other kid in or about 1960 1977, while at Our Lady of Grace, expressing concerns that he was gay to you?
No.
Doe 26 reports that you told him that you were going to tell his parents that he was gay unless you let him touch his genitals. Do you deny that?
I deny it.
He also reports that one of the times you made him perform fellatio on him.
Not true.
And at least one other occasion, masturbated and fondled him to orgasm. Do you deny that?
Yes.
He reports that once when he was going to confession, it was an open confession. Did you do open confessions at Our Lady of Grace?
I forget when they kind of started. I may have, yeah.
And where did you do the open confessions?
Well, you just set up chairs in the church, 2 chairs, and it could be any place inside the church.
It would be in a private area, but in a room face-to-face as opposed to in a traditional confessional
Right.
booth, correct?
Right.
And he reports that at one time in an open confession, while on the kneeler, you engaged in sexual contact with him. Do you deny that?
Yeah, I'd lodge an objection. By statute and also church canon law, a priest cannot reveal what has occurred in a confession. He's not permitted to do it. If he does it, he's violated church law. So I lodge an objection, and I instruct him not to answer it, even though it's maybe a public confession. But in this one area of your questioning, Mr. Anderson, that's problematic. If you can rephrase it, perhaps, but as it stands, I instruct you not to answer because it's violating church law and also statutory law.
Well, I'll rephrase that because I can deal with that objection. Did you engage this kid, a Doe 26, in sexual contact while in the sacrament of confession?
No.
Are you aware that it is a canonical crime to engage or solicit any sex at the confessional?
Yes.
When did you learn that?
Well, in the seminary,
He reports that at some point he tried to get away from you and you followed him. Do you remember having ever done that to this kid or any other kid while at Our Lady of Grace?
No.
Did you touch the genitals of kids while you were in the seminary?
No.
Well, what made you start doing it as a priest?
Well, when you say touching genitals, that's what throws, I thought it appropriate to recreate with, we were encouraged, to recreate in different sports with the young people. And I did that, whether it was playing basketball, throwing the football, whatever. The different sports, recreation, that was encouraged, And that was the good priest, you know, to be seen with the young people. And in those days, there were so many priests that, you know, you could kind of divide things up. So I played sports, you know, I recreated. And I was always a teaser. I liked to tease, you know. And I never thought of it as sexual, though, you know.
So, when you were in seminary, you became a deacon at some point in time, correct?
Yes.
And as a deacon, and while in seminary, you were encouraged to recreate with kids as a deacon, were you not? And develop relationships with them.
Yes, and with adults, of course.
Of course.
Yeah.
But youth as well.
Yes.
And you were encouraged to help in their formation and development, spiritually and otherwise, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay. He can't record so you have to say yes or no, okay?
Okay.
And so, during the period of time as a deacon and while in seminary, did you engage in this kind of recreation with youth where you would have contact with their genitals?
No.
So what, in your view, made you start engaging in recreation with these youth where you would have contact with their genitals after you became a priest in 1966? What was it that made you start to do that, Father?
Well, you have to remember, when I was a deacon, you know, I was in Italy, and that was so heavily academic over there, and we had no time. You were studying all the time in Rome, and so you had no time to be with young people or, you know.
So do you have any insight into what made you have this kind of sexual contact with youth that you've described as wrestling? What made you do that?
No, I don't.
You were under a vow of celibate chastity, in other words, to not have any sexual contact, correct?
Yes.
Is that a way you satisfied your sexual desires and impulses? Is to wrestle with these kids and put your hands on their genitals?
Yeah. Subliminally, you mean? Or I don't know.
Did it turn you on, Father?
No.
Did you get erect?
No.
Did you have any sexual contact or sexual activity beyond what you've described with any buddy since your ordination to satisfy your sexual impulses?
Are you talking about adolescence or
Anybody?
who? Yeah. Since ordination, yes. Yeah.
How did you satisfy your sexual impulses?
By far, one thing: masturbation.
With any other individual?
No, by myself. Yeah.
In when you would masturbate, did you fantasize about kids or adolescents who are boys?
I would fantasize about ladies, and men.
Do you consider yourself gay, heterosexual, or bisexual?
Bisexual.
And have you always had a sexual attraction to male adolescents, young males?
No, I've always had, can I answer that? I've always had an attraction to women. I mean, now this goes way back, right, to, can I answer? To the very beginning, high school. I liked girls, dated a bit, felt an attraction there, and yet I also wondered about the whole gay thing, attraction there, Jeff, and yet what happened in my life, I'm talking about me, right? And I always had to put that to the side because of priesthood, and I always had to push it to the side because I knew I could not develop anything because of celibacy. And celibacy has dominated my life. I don't know if that's a good word, but governed my life. And but I've always felt attraction to ladies, to a woman, whoever. I mean, to this day, I still and dream about Judy, the gal I loved in high school, but could not do anything there. And yet I've also have homosexual feelings, and they became more as I think I became more aware of them as I got older. Whereas in high school, way back 60, 70 years ago, well, first of all, the whole gay thing, I didn't even hear the word. I was a senior in high school. Now, this may sound funny, but it's true. I was at Nazareth Hall, to give you a concrete example, but I was at Nazareth Hall. I was a senior in high school, and two of the seminarians were talking about this homosexual. I did not, I'm a senior in high school, right, Jeff? I did not know what that word meant. I'm 17, 18 years old. And and I remember going back to the library and opening up the dictionary, what is that, And so what I'm saying is, I do feel bisexual feelings, homosexual feelings. I have for some time. And yet the a woman, if I could have done it, I've always thought would make me happy, but I always said no because of the demand of celibacy. Yeah.
And I think in an earlier deposition you described that you were taught and understood that your own sexuality and sex drive is probably so strong it's only second to your need to survive. Is that?
Well, I would say eating would be in there.
Okay. It goes with survival.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
The homosexual or urges or fantasies that you have had, have they been towards post-pubescent boys?
Towards men, yeah.
What about youth?
No.
Not at all?
No, not really. No. Yeah.
In 1966, was your first assignment to St. Mark's in St. Paul?
Yes.
And look at the Doe list. Doe number 1, you see that name,
Yes.
and there are indications that a claim has been made that you sexually abused or engaged in sexual contact with Doe 1 when he was then 11 years old and you were a priest at St. Mark's. Did you do that to him?
No.
Did you wrestle with him?
I don't recall wrestling with him. I know who it is.
Did you wrestle with kids at St. Mark's for recreation and other reasons as a priest?
I would have to have a name.
Well, look at that name. Do you deny
Yeah.
having touched the genitals of Doe 1?
Yes.
Do you deny having wrestled with Doe 1?
I don't recall if we played basketball over there, and whether I ever put my arms around him, I don't recall that.
Look at Doe 2. You used his name, and he went by Jamie, and he has been public, so we can. You've already used his name, so I'm not going to worry about that. As Hutmaker, did you touch his genitals?
Yeah. Can I explain the whole?
Well, it's a yes or no. Did you
Well,
touch his genitals?
No.
Did you deny
What?
touching his genitals?
Now let me think. I have to think. What? This is Hotmaker. Yeah. I do not recall touching his suit on the outside. I do recall I was holding him like this, chest, stomach, and I do recall squeezing him in my, finger or was a little bit inside the suit, his suit, or whatever he was wearing. I do recall that, and I mentioned that to them afterwards. And but I did not, go over to the center and touch his genitals.
Did you touch the outside of his genitals on the outside of his swimsuit?
Yeah. And that's a good question. I don't recall that. What I recall is this thing. That's what I recall. And I remember talking about that afterwards to Mr. and Mrs. Hutmaker. But I know for sure I did not come over, to the center. For sure I had my arms around him. For sure we wrestled a little bit. I remember that. But I don't recall on the outside.
When you say wrestled, is that Italian wrestling you had learned?
Well,
earlier
I don't know.
That you
It's
referred
just
to?
freaky, whatever that's just a word.
Was it your belief that Italian wrestling include putting your hands on the genitals of the kid you were wrestling with? Is that what you
No,
believe?
not really. No,
What about his?
not at all.
Did you make genitals or wrestle with a friend?
No. Yeah, I put my arms on. I felt so sorry for
But if you said no, is
Okay.
that your answer? You didn't made any attempt to touch?
sexually.
Well,
I touched his shoulders, getting out of the swimming pool area. I felt sorry for because I spent the time with Jamie.
well, let's talk about the physical contact.
Just
Did you wrestle with him?
I don't recall that at all. All I
Were you in the pool with them
Yes.
at Lake Nokomis?
yes,
Okay. Did you lay your hand upon any part of his swimsuit?
not that I can recall. Right.
Do that and lay your hands upon him and his genitals. Do you know why he would make such a claim if you hadn't?
No, I don't. I basically ignored him.
Father, you're aware that parents and Jamie's parents, are you not?
Yes.
And who brought that information to you? And how did you learn that a complaint had been made that you had sexually touched these kids?
I had a wedding for Jamie's sister, I think it was, and she canceled. I was on a trip or someplace, and I came back, and she wanted another priest to do her wedding. So then I called the hut makers up, and then they wanted me to come over, and that's when we talked about it.
So what do you remember having happened then once you learned a report had been made about you having touched the boys?
I missed the first part.
What happened?
With what?
After a report was made by the parents that you had touched their boys. What happened to you?
Oh, nothing.
Did anybody scold you, reprimand you, discipline you, or warn you not to do that?
No.
And so you continued in ministry.
Yes.
You continued to minister at St. Mark's to the parents and the kids, correct?
Yes.
And you continued to recreate with kids by wrestling with them as you had before, correct?
Yes.
And then who met with you or brought to your attention the fact that this report had been made about your conduct? Who with the Archdiocese?
Who contacted me?
Yes. You had learned a complaint had been made
Yeah.
about you and two kids, right? By the parents.
Yeah, there was no report, like an official report, you know.
Well, a complaint verbally had been communicated.
Yeah. Bill Kenny met with me to talk about the change of assignment to Our Lady of Grace.
And did he meet with you to tell you, he was acting under the authority of the Archbishop when he met
Right.
with you, I trust?
Yes.
And did he tell you that the Archbishop had learned of the report and was considering reassigning you because of it?
I forget the words. I mean, he just mentioned the hut maker thing. Because Monsignor Gilligan and I were not always getting along in terms of the general stuff in the parish. So, you know, they wanted me to move because of that. The differences between Monsignor Gilligan and myself. And so we talked about that for a bit.
Were you aware that Gilligan had also received the report?
We never talked about it.
Okay. And did it become clear to you that they were considering assigning you out of St. Mark's because of difficulties with Gilligan and because what had been reported to the parents and the complaint made by them?
Yes.
Okay. And you were then assigned out of St. Mark's sometime after that by
Yes.
the Archbishop, correct?
Yes.
And it was Kenny, under the authority of the Archbishop, that discussed that with you, correct?
Yes.
Did Kenny at that time ask you if you had touched the boys inappropriately?
We never talked about it. Yeah.
So he didn't ask.
Right.
Did he ask you if you had sexual thoughts about boys or fantasies about youth at that time?
No.
Did he suggest to you that to touch boys, as had been reported by these parents, would be against the law or a crime?
No.
So you continued as a priest as you had before and were assigned by the then Archbishop to Our Lady of Grace.
Yes.
And that assignment was effective in 1969, not long after these reports were made, right?
I think I came to Lady of Grace in 1970, but January 1970.
Did the Archbishop or any of the other officials besides Kenny talk to you about this problem?
No,
Did you see it as a problem then?
no.
Was anybody else told about why you were moved out of St. Mark's, or the circumstances of you having been moved from St. Mark's to Our Lady of Grace?
I missed that first part.
Let me ask you this. What was the reason given for your assignment out of St. Mark's to Our Lady of Grace, to the parishioners?
To say Mark's parishioners?
Yes.
I don't know what they were told.
What time of year was that?
Well, I thought it was.
That was made?
I thought I went to Our Lady of Grace January of '70.
Did Kenny, when you met with him, tell you to stop doing what you had done that caused the complaint to have been made?
No.
And when you're sent to Our Lady of Grace, you continued to recreate with youth there as you had at St. Mark's, correct?
Yes.
Including wrestling with them, correct?
Yes.
And look at Exhibit A, Doe 4. Do you see that name, Doe 4?
Yes.
Did you wrestle with that kid at Our Lady of Grace?
No. I don't know.
You see, did you wrestle with that kid at any time?
Well, I'm trying to. This is
While
a
you were a priest at
parishioner.
Our Lady.
This is a parishioner.
Well, actually, you can see the name.
Yeah. That's why
So it can be either, or it can be a parishioner or non-parishioner. My question is to you is, did you engage in this wrestling with Doe 4 the same way you had with Doe 2 and 3?
Well, 2 and 3 were different.
I know.
Oh,
Well, they're different people, but did you do
No.
the same kind of thing to Doe 4 that you did to 2 and 3? Or to Jamie?
but 2 and 3 is different. We talked about that already. Then you're putting them together.
Did you do the same thing to Doe 4 as you did to Doe 2, that is Jamie?
No.
Did you engage in any sexual contact with Doe 4?
No.
None at all? What, you have to answer audibly.
No.
Okay. Did you have any sexual impulses or attraction to Doe 4?
No.
Look at Doe 5. Did you engage in any of this, any kind of contact with Doe 5 that you had with Jamie at St. Mark?
Not at all.
Do you deny any sexual contact with him? That is, the touching of his genitals, wrestling, or anything else outside his clothing at any time?
I can't say the name, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
You can say you did or you didn't.
No. Nothing with 5.
Look at number 6. Did you engage in any sexual contact or wrestling as you've described it with 6?
No.
Look at the name 7. Did you engage in any sexual contact or wrestling as you have described it with 7?
No.
Do you recognize the name?
I recognize the last name. It was a big family. So I'm not.
Okay, look at Doe 8. Did you engage in any sexual contact or wrestling as you've described it with Doe 8?
No.
Look at Doe 9. Did you engage in any sexual contact or wrestling as you've described it with 9?
No.
Look at Doe 10. In early 1970s, did you engage in any sexual contact or wrestling as you've described it with Doe 10?
No.
Look at Doe 11. Did you engage? You did tell us that you did engage in some kind of contact with Doe 11, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
But
The name is misspelled.
yes.
And you can make a correction on the exhibit as to the correct spelling of the name.
Whoops. Here.
Yeah, don't state what it is, but write it on the typewritten exhibit A. Just don't state the name.
Is that what he wants?
And so, referring to Doe 11 then, what did you do to him? Was he 11 years old at that time?
Maybe about.
What'd you do?
We were at the seminary, and I forget what sport we played, basketball or I forget. But then we went into the weight room, did some machine stuff there. And then we just rested on the mat. There were some wrestling mats there. And then I put my arm around him, and he's like this, you know, and I touched the upper part of his buttocks for 2 seconds or whatever. And I never touched the genitals on the outside, much less the inside. But I do remember, you know, what I said. Yeah.
Was that for your own sexual purpose?
I did not consider it any sexual thing.
Did it turn you on?
No.
Why did you do it? If it wasn't for a sexual purpose?
Well, I just don't see wrestling as sexual. I mean,
Did you make a settlement with this kid?
no,
Are you aware that a claim was made?
no,
Have you made any settlements with any of these kids?
here,
Yes.
no,
Write down the name of the kid as on your list, and write it down as, we'll call it Doe 20. And we'll want to keep that name confidential, so I'll ask you not to state the name of the individual, but I'll want you to write it on the exhibit.
What's the question?
yeah,
The name of the individual with whom you made a settlement.
May I lodge an objection?
Yes.
The objection is that we've disclosed in discovery that there was a settlement. The nature of the settlement was confidential, and by the terms as I've read the settlement, is that it could not be disclosed.
But this is under seal by a court order.
The entire deposition is under seal.
No. This particular exhibit and the identities of these particular people are by stipulation in this deposition under a complete seal.
Okay. Well, I'll lodge my objection, but so that we don't have to come back.
Sure.
And I preserve my objection for future litigation, should we
Understood.
have it. And without waiving any confidentiality that he's promised on that agreement, you may put the name of the individual down there, Father, so that we may progress on the discovery rather than come back.
I forget that last name.
If you know the name, write the name. If you don't know the last name, you can't write it.
Yeah, I can't think of it.
We'll have you write it later. And maybe counsel can help you at that time. We'll have you write later.
He's got, for the record, he's got the first name. but-
Okay.
Well, maybe after the break we can work on it.
Okay. I'm going to direct your attention back to the time frame of the early 1970s while you're at Our Lady of Grace, and specifically 1973. Let's see. (1972, 1973). I think I had asked you last about DOE 10 and then DOE 11. And I'm now at DOE 12. Look at DOE 12. Did you engage in DOE 12 in any sexual contact or wrestling as you've described it?
No.
Look at DOE 13 in 1973-74. Did you engage in any sexual contact with DOE 13 or wrestling as you've described it?
No.
In 1976, it appears that you were assigned to Immaculate Heart of Mary in Minnetonka. And you're a co-pastor there with Father I think it's Custodio, correct?
Yes.
Why were you reassigned from Our Lady of Grace to Immaculate Heart of Mary? Was it because of something that had happened with one of these kids, like at St. Mark's?
No.
What time of year was the assignment?
June.
Okay, the assignments are usually made in June, aren't they?
More of them, right.
The assignment that had been made by you, the Archbishop of you from St. Mark's to Our Lady of Grace, however, was made in December, not the ordinary time of assignments, correct?
Correct.
And that was because of the complaint that had been made and the concern around it?
I think so.
Okay. And so the assignment to Immaculate Heart of Mary in any case didn't have anything to do with a complaint as far as you know, correct?
Right.
Okay. And then when you were there, did you continue to wrestle with the kids, recreate with the kids, and do pretty much the same things you had done with the kids that you had at your earlier parishes?
In general, yes.
And you believed it was innocent conduct, not criminal in nature when you did this, didn't you?
Yes.
And you now know it wasn't innocent contact, don't you?
I know it's now inappropriate, yes.
Well, do you know that it does harm to kids over whom you have control, over whom you have a position of trust, over whom you have a special position of power, and that when you engage them in the conduct you did, it confuses them and causes them harm? Do you know that, Father?
I've come to realize that, yeah.
When did you realize that?
Well, there's no magic date, just gradually,
While at Immaculate Heart of Mary, and when you were assigned there, was anybody there, either your fellow pastors or the staff, told about the allegations that had been made against you earlier concerning the kids at St. Mark's?
Not that I can recall.
That had always been kept kind of secret and on the down low, hadn't it?
Yes.
And so, well, at Immaculate Heart, then, look at DOE 14. Did you engage DOE 14 in some sexual contact or wrestling as you've described it while you were pastor or co-pastor?
No. I touched their shoulders, I remember once, and that was it.
Did you wrestle with him?
No.
In 1977, tell us what you did to Doe 15, which has now been publicly self-disclosed as Al-Mishad.
Yeah, what happened?
What you did to him.
Yeah, right. Well, we're at the seminary and at the swimming pool, and a whole bunch of people, I don't know how many, 20, 25, a lot of people, and tired. This is AM, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Excuse me. Anyway, I had my arms around him in my hold that I told you about before, my famous hold. And kids were coming and going. This was a Boy Scout thing, you know. And they were trying to dunk me, spraying water in my face. I was spraying water in their face. And what's the number? And 15 was right there. I had my hands on his waist like this. And I know I put my arms around him. And like I say, all kinds of stuff was going on. It was a busy place, you know, it's a swimming pool was. And I would let go of him. You know, a kid would try to take me down. I mean, by taking down, just, you know, what I call horsing around, you know. And so, I mean, I would let go of 15. I would let go of 15 because somebody comes on top of me, right? And he never moved away. You know, kids would come and go, you know, but 15 never did. And but I did have my arms around him like this, on his sides. I did put my arms around him in front, and I touched him on the outside, never the inside of the suit, not the inside of the suit. And at some point, you know, I thought, does he have an erection? And that was it. I was surprised. And
this was a teenage boy, correct?
Yes.
And you had brought him to the seminary on that day to recreate with him?
See, I don't recall.
Or he was at the seminary?
He was at the seminary.
Okay.
I recall I took him home, and I don't recall taking him there, though. I don't know what happened there.
Okay. And anything else sexual happened?
No.
Look at Doe list number 16 in the name. Did you engage in sexual contact with him in 1977 or 78 when he was 11 years old? Either sexual contact or the kind of wrestling you've described?
No.
Look at Doe 17 in 1977 or 78. Did you engage in sexual contact with him or the kind of wrestling as you've described?
No.
Did you do anything with any of these does like you had with Doe 15 where they got erections?
No.
At this point in time in your sexual experience or wrestling experience with all the kids we've identified, had any of the other kids gotten erections besides Doe 15 AM
All these names?
so far? Yeah.
Yeah. Not that I can recall.
Did
Yeah.
you get erections?
No.
Never?
Nope.
In 1979, did you engage in wrestling with or any sexual contact with Doe 18?
No.
In 1981 or 82, did you engage in sexual contact or wrestling as you've described it with Doe 19? What were we going to say about 18?
Wait. Yeah. I'm trying to get the names here. Remember what, can I go back a little bit?
If you need to.
Well, I'm just trying to figure, I always forget, I cannot say the name.
Just use a number.
Yeah. Before I said about touching the shoulders, you know, of when you mentioned 14, I was thinking of 18.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Because of the similarity of names.
Yeah. Well, and they're two different people, but nothing happened with 14. But I did touch the shoulders and kidded around with 18.
What year
But I
was
got it
that?
mixed. Oh, I don't know.
That's okay.
I don't know.
What assignment were you at when that happened?
It's so long ago.
Did you wrestle with him?
No. Not.
Okay, look at Doe. 19 then. Did you engage in any sexual contact or wrestling as you've described it with 19?
No, I don't know this name.
At some point in time, did you learn that that John Doe 26 had written a letter to Archbishop Roach?
No.
Have you ever heard that?
No.
Have you ever heard that Archbishop Roach or anybody at the chancery received a letter from Doe 26 reporting sexual abuse by you of him as a youth?
No.
When is the next time, after having been removed from St. Mark's for the reasons you've described and sent to Our Lady of Grace, did any archdiocesan officials discuss with you concerns about your relationships to or conduct with youth?
I understand your question. I think I understand your question. I never talked to anybody in authority. That's what you're talking
Yes.
about, Jeff, about any of this. The archbishops,
What about
well,
O'Connell or McDonough?
Okay, yeah, okay. I was thinking of bishops, and
Okay.
because I went for evaluations, but we never. I guess that was really the main thing. They sent me to get an evaluation, you know, but I didn't talk to them about it. I talked to the evaluators, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
So are you aware of any other reports made to the Archbishop besides the 1969 report by the two moms?
I don't understand the question.
Are you aware of any reports going to the Archdiocese besides the reports that you, the
Of the
complaints of the
69.
mom made in 1969?
Yeah, no.
Are you aware of any reports or complaints being lodged with staff members that worked with you or for you at any of the parishes about your conduct towards the youth?
No.
Are you aware of rumors going around about you and your conduct towards the youth and being a problem?
No, it never got back to me. Yeah.
Do you have any knowledge that in 1987 the mothers that had made the original complaint, Jamie's mother being one of them, met with Archdiocese officials about you? Do you have any knowledge of that?
No.
You did say that at some point in time you were sent by the Archdiocese and those some officials to be evaluated. Is that right?
Yes.
What year was that, Father?
Okay. Let me think now. The year. I think I know. 87,
Okay.
I think.
And what were you told about why you were being sent? And by whom? Tell us the circumstances. How did that come up? What happened?
How did it come up? Well, I don't know what went on at the Chancery. You know, I wasn't part of that, you know. So I don't know that history at all.
What were you told, though?
I got, yeah, right, exactly. Who called me?
Was it Father O'Connell?
Well, he would have been the one, because he was the Vicar General then.
Yes.
And it wasn't the bishop or the archbishop. It was Mike and, oh yeah, now I remember, yeah. And they just said, you know, they did some review. Mike said something like this. Don't quote me, I don't know the exact words, you know. And I have a bad throat.
It's okay.
But yeah, I remember now. And I got a call from Michael, and he said, Jerry, we would like you to do an evaluation. And so I did. I mean,
Okay, so let's just make sure we're talking about the same thing at the same time. You said the year is 1987.
I think so.
You're contacted by the then Vicar General, Michael O'Connell,
Yes.
and you know that he's acting under the authority of then Archbishop Roach, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And when he contacts you under the authority of Archbishop Roach, he tells you that he'd like to have an evaluation done of you, correct?
Yes.
He also imparts to you that some problem has arisen that would cause him to be concerned enough to have this evaluation done, correct? Did he tell you what it was?
I forget that part.
Did he give you any clue that there was
Well, that's
concerns
what
about you posing a danger of
Oh.
harm to the kids?
I did. Yeah.
Did he clue you in on that?
Well, that's not what he said. I mean,
I know, but what did he say then about
Well,
the reason he wanted
yeah.
you to have an evaluation done?
I forget what he said. I mean, that they were going over records or something, or I forget what he said. all I remember is what happened. I mean,
Okay. Before he said that to you in 1987 under the authority of the Archbishop, had you ever gotten any counseling or been required to get any counseling or therapy by the Archdiocese?
no,
Had you ever received any?
no,
Okay. And you were sent someplace to have this evaluation done by the Archbishop through Father O'Connell, correct?
yes,
And that was to Service of Paraclete.
yes,
And you knew that that was a facility in New Mexico, correct?
yes,
And you went down there for this assessment, did you not?
yes,
And when you did, you also knew that the Archdiocese officials, that is Father O'Connell and the Archbishop, would get reports from the assessment done by the people at the Service of Paraclete.
yes,
And that they were free to ask the people at the Service of Paraclete questions about the assessment and about your fitness and about your history and anything else they needed to know, correct?
yes,
In other words, if you had some kind of medical privilege, you knew that you were giving that up, correct?
I object to the form of the question. The objection is that the medical privilege is given up in a limited sense to the Archbishop and his staff.
Let him answer the question and see what he says. You understood that they were free to get whatever information the Service of Paraclete had, correct?
Who was free?
Father O'Connell and the Archdiocese.
Were free to,
Get access to whatever information was garnered about you at Service of Paraclete.
yes,
Okay. And so, when you were down there, were you told by Father O'Connell or any official of the Archdiocese that it had to do with you being a risk of harm by reason of sexual conduct to youth while working as a priest? Did they give you any idea that that was the reason?
they never said that, but I mean,
Did you ask, why are you sending me down to this place?
well, yeah, I had a clue that, it was because of that whole topic, and
The topic is sexual conduct with youth.
right,
Okay.
right, yeah.
And so,
Back on the video record at 11:15 a.m.
all right, Father, I had directed your attention back to the time before you're sent by Father O'Connell, the Vicar General, under the authority of the Archbishop to the Service of Paraclete facility. You knew that was a treatment facility that you were being sent to, didn't you?
Yes,
Okay. And before you actually went there, at the direction of Father O'Connell and the Archbishop, did Father O'Connell or any other official of the Archdiocese sit down with you and say to you, Father, tell us everything you have done to any kid while being a priest at Our Lady of Grace, at St. Mark's, or any other parish? Did anybody ever ask you that question?
not that I can recall.
Let's talk about at a Service of Paraclete. You were down there for how many days?
I'm not sure, 4 or
The
5.
records look like they show about 5 days
Yeah,
down there.
that sounds about right,
Okay.
yeah.
And that you were interviewed by a number of people down there, were you not?
Yes,
Were you asked about your sexual history by those people?
May I lodge a standing objection as to privilege as to his treatment and evaluation? I appreciate Judge Vandernoor's contrary ruling. I take issue with it, but I do lodge the objection. You may have a standing objection, Mr. Anderson.
You may have continuing.
You may answer under those circumstances.
Yeah. Don't have to worry about that. This is what lawyers do. We have to say certain things at certain times, but what you need to know is, I'll ask you the question again. When you went down to the Service of Paraclete, you were interviewed by a number of people at that time, some of whom were priests, some of whom were psychologists, right?
yes.
And some of whom were priests and psychologists.
I'm not sure.
Do you remember who it was that interviewed at St. Luke's? I mean, at the Service of Paraclete?
No,
Okay.
the names I don't know.
Okay.
No.
And did they ask you about your sexual history and ask you to tell them about your sexual history at the service of Paraclete? Your sexual attraction and things like that?
I can't remember.
Okay.
We talked about different things.
And when you returned from the service of Paraclete, did you understand that the archdiocese officials and Father O'Connell, the Vicar General, would get information from them about their findings?
Yes.
And do you know what their findings were? Were you told by Father O'Connell or anybody else?
Good question. What happened? I came back. I can't remember a meeting. You mean going over the evaluation?
Yeah, what they found,
You
if
know.
there was something wrong or
Yeah,
there were some
right.
problems in your
Yeah.
sexual history or acting out or...
I don't recall sitting down and talking about it.
Yeah. When you returned from the servants of Paraclete, what happened to you in your status in terms of assignment?
Nothing.
Okay. And so you were allowed to continue in ministry as you had before.
Yes.
And at that time you were at Immaculate Mary, correct?
Immaculate Heart. Right?
Did anybody from this archdiocese, as far as you know, go down and visit you or those that were seeing you down at Servant Paraclete in New Mexico?
Not that I can recall.
Who paid for that assessment?
The Archdiocese.
And have you seen any of the correspondence between the Archdiocese and the Service of Paraclete about sending you there, or the reasons for it, or the findings made?
Yeah. Not that I can recall. Yeah, like a report or something, or a document.
The records reflect that it might have been in the summer of '87 that you went down there. Do you remember that was the summer? It was hot down
Yeah,
there?
it was warm.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah. That's a nice facility down there, though, isn't it?
Pretty nice.
In November of that year, about 5 months after you'd been sent to the service of Paraclete, did something come up that you're aware where Father Custodio reported that you had a habit of pulling young boys onto your lap and tickling them? Do you remember a problem like that?
No.
Do you remember Father O'Connell getting involved again in November of that year, 5 months after you come back from service of Paraclete, about your involvement with kids at the parish?
Meeting with them or
Meeting or something being brought to your attention, or a problem either from Father O'Connell or Father Custodio?
no.
Do you remember receiving information that a Father Carlson, who was, I think at that time, was Bob Carlson, a chancellor or auxiliary bishop? Do you remember? In 1987? Remember Bob Carlson getting involved?
No.
Okay. Do you ever receive any information that Father Carlson saw you at Lorraine Park at a time of night where there's a high degree of men soliciting for sex? and he brought that to the attention of the Archdiocese?
I don't recall that.
Do you remember seeing Bob Carlson in Loring Park
No,
at night?
no.
Do you remember being asked to see a local psychologist by the name of Gary Schoner in Minneapolis?
Yes.
What caused them to have you go back and see Dr. Schoner in 1987 after having been sent to the service of Paraclete?
The reason I was told was because they must have been understaffed in New Mexico when I was down there, and there were a couple of things they did not do. I remember the one big thing was like the Minnesota multiphasic, whatever that's called, you know. So there was some tests that did not complete in New Mexico, and then Gary did them up in Minneapolis.
Did you receive information before being sent to Dr. Schoner that Father O'Connell had seen you with a young boy at the seminary in November of '87, and that caused further concern for him, given your history?
No.
Had anybody raised with you at that time concerns about you having a habit of pulling young boys onto your lap?
No.
Had you been doing that?
I don't recall, but you're saying that. No, nobody said anything to me.
Are you aware that the Archdiocese was free to get information from Dr. Schoner about his findings and assessment of you?
I assume that.
You told Dr. Schoner that all the things you had done before was basically roughhousing, and you were innocent of any sexual abuse of kids, didn't you?
I lodged the same objection with Dr. Schroner as I did with the Paracletes. You may continue.
Yeah, forget the.
Did you tell Dr. Schoner that you had not engaged in any sex with kids?
Yes.
Did you tell Father O'Connell that you'd never engaged in sex with kids?
Yeah, I think so. I forget.
When you were sent to the servants of Paraclete, were any of the parishioners told that you were being... What were the parishioners told about why you departed and left?
I don't think anything, but I'm not sure of that. I was gone. You know, something could have happened when I was gone.
Other than the officials of the Archdiocese that sent you to Dr. Schoner, was anybody told that you were being assessed again by Dr. Schoner?
I don't think so.
In 1988, there is some kind of apology letter from you to the parents that had complained back in 1969, Hutmaker and the other mom. Do you remember why you wrote that?
Yes, and I wrote it because Mike O'Connell asked me to.
And did he tell you why that is being written in 1988 when the events had happened in 1969?
He didn't say why.
Did he suggest to you that there were concerns that this could go public and we have to keep this among ourselves and try to keep these parents from making this public?
Well, he didn't say that.
Did he imply it?
trying to think of what. Not really. I mean, he basically said to me by telephone, I remember the telephone call, that I'm trying to think of something. There are two things. Maybe I should forget the first thing because I don't know. So I can't remember. That's why I can't. That's why I'm fuzzy. I was going to say the first thing was I thought he said that, but I'm not sure now, that they did have a letter from me, but that they had lost it. That's what I'm thinking. They had lost it, and would you do another letter? You know, but for sure he said that. You know, I remember for sure it said, would you, all the HUD makers want is to get a letter of apology, and that's all they want, and everything is fine. I remember that clearly. And whether they had lost a letter before, see, that may not be true. I can't remember that.
Did he imply to you that if you do that, then it won't go to the police and the public won't know?
No, nothing like that was said.
Was it implied?
No.
Was this matter being handled entirely internally, that is by the Archbishop and those under his authority, with you? I
think so.
And nobody else knew about it, right?
From what I know, yeah.
And so, in 1990, did it come to your attention that there were concerns about you having earlier taken your pants off in front of a boy in a group setting sometime before? Anybody ever raise that with you?
No.
In 1992, look at doe number 6 in that name, okay? I want you to put that name in your head. See doe number 6?
Yes.
In 1992, did Father McDonough talk to you about your sexual history and a problem concerning that kid?
I talked to him.
Okay. Without using that kid's name, what did you tell Father McDonough?
Somebody called me up, said he was having marriage problems and wanted to just talk things over, and made an appointment. And then at whatever day that was, 2 guys show up, which surprised me, of course, right off the, 2 different guys showed up, one of them being 6. And, I didn't know who they were. And he asked me, did you abuse me? I says, no. And I didn't know who they were.
And so what came of that? What happened?
Well, what happened is, I remember I called Kevin McDonough up and told him these 2 guys had come to my office, and I told him just what I just said to you,
and you denied to Kevin McDonough that you had sexually abused doe 6.
Yes.
As he had claimed.
Yes.
Do you know if McDonough interviewed doe 6?
I don't know. Yeah.
But you volunteered to McDonough that Doe had confronted you with having sexually abused him.
Yes.
When he was a teen was it at Blessed, where was it at? Mary...
Immaculate Heart.
Immaculate Heart?
Yes. Yeah. Well, I don't know.
Well, that's okay. Do you know if Kevin McDonough asked you if you had actually abused this kid, or what your relationship was to him?
Well, I told him I had not, and I did not even know him. And that was it.
And so did he press you? How long was that conversation with McDonough?
Not too long. I mean, I don't know, 10 minutes, I don't know.
And so you continued in ministry at that time?
Yes.
Okay. And then the next year, did it come to your attention that Al Mashad had contacted Father McDonough and reported to Father McDonough that you had abused him as a child? Did that come to your attention?
Well, see, I forget no sequence here.
This would be the year after Doe 6 had come forward and complained to you,
Yeah.
and you had denied it. And now the next year, in 1993, did you become aware that Al Mashad had come forward to Kevin McDonough and reported that he had been sexually abused by you earlier, and he's now an adult? Did you learn that from Father McDonough or any other official of the Archdiocese?
I wasn't, let's see, what's the number? 15. My mind is not working. I forget your sequence. I'm sorry, Jeff.
That's okay. So the sequence is first,
Yeah.
a Doe 6 contacts you
Yeah, right.
and says, you sexually abused me.
Yeah. I got
You
all that.
contacted Father McDonough and said, I got this guy to contact
Right.
me and says that I sexually abused me. I met with McDonough, and I heard you say that he met with you for a short period of time. You denied it, right? Abusing Doe 6.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no.
And
That's
then
not-
the next year, do you recall you received information that Al Mashad had come forward and reported that you had sexually abused him? Did you learn that?
Well, I learned it, yeah, at the time of the lawsuit. you
Okay.
know.
Before you got sued, did you know that he had come forward?
Oh, I see your question now. Sorry. I just can't recall.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I can't.
You do remember getting sued? You know, remember that
Oh,
I
sure.
represented him, right?
I sure do.
And actually, you sat for a deposition in that case, didn't you?
Yes.
And you denied having sexually abused him, didn't you?
And how I understood sexual abuse, yeah, at that time, yeah.
And in 1993, before, at the time that you got sued, you certainly denied that you had sexually abused him, and you claimed to have been innocent. Correct?
Well, yes.
And do you recall that Archbishop Roach ever talking to him about this and your guilt or innocence?
No.
Who from the Archdiocese did you deal with then? Only McDonough?
With 15?
Yes.
Yes.
And any other officials of the Archdiocese besides Kevin McDonough?
No.
Okay. Did Father McDonough tell you to keep it on the down low so the parishioners wouldn't hear or know of this complaint?
He never said that to me.
He didn't have to for you to keep it quiet, correct?
Well, I wasn't about to advertise it, but he never said that to me.
So at that point in time, the only ones that knew about what Doe 6 had reported and now what Al Mishad is reporting are Father McDonough, the Archbishop, yourself, and presumably those that had treated you. They're the only ones that know about it, right?
Probably, yeah.
When Al Mishad sued you, we filed that complaint and made it public. You're aware of that, aren't you?
Yes.
And that was the first time the public had ever been informed that you had ever been accused of sexual abuse of a minor, correct?
I'm
When
not
we
sure.
made when I made that public,
Yeah.
correct?
Okay. Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Probably.
Is it also correct that shortly after that lawsuit was filed, the Archbishop appeared at your parish and addressed the parishioners?
I have no recollection of that.
Do you recall him, Archbishop Roche, preparing a letter to the parishioners?
No.
Do you recall ever seeing or hearing that he prepared a letter to the parishioners at Immaculate Heart of Mary informing them that a lawsuit had been filed, that abuse had been alleged, and that you denied it?
Yeah, there's a letter, but I know it became public,
Okay.
and I denied it
Okay.
publicly.
The
Right.
fact that you denied it and you claimed to have been innocent became public also,
Yes,
didn't it?
yes, yes.
Are you aware that Kevin McDonough came to talk to the parishioners at Blessed, at Immaculate Heart?
Yes.
Okay. What did he tell them?
I forget. I really I can't remember. He just told about the complaint. I mean, you know, sexual abuse complaint, and
He also told them that there was no evidence that you had committed that, correct?
I can't remember that. Yeah.
He told them that you denied it,
Yeah,
you
okay.
had, correct?
Yeah.
And he told them that you were innocent, didn't he?
Yeah, probably. I can't remember what he said.
Did he ever tell them that you had been accused of similar conduct before by others, going back to 69?
Not that I recall.
He told... were you finished? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. He also told him, didn't he, that actually this lawsuit had been brought claiming sexual abuse, but the facts as reported by you and reported to him, to the parishioners, was that this happened in a pool, and there were 70 others in the pool, and the plaintiff wasn't a parishioner, and the plaintiff had no prior relationship with you, and he kind of made the case to those people that you hadn't done this, didn't he?
Well, perhaps. I just don't remember the.
And you
The talk.
continued in ministry after that,
Yes,
didn't you?
yes.
And so the parishioners pretty much came to your support, believing that you hadn't done anything wrong, correct?
Yes, I think so. Yeah.
And do you recall that Archbishop Roche at some point in time communicated to the parishioners and proclaimed that this kid, now adult, Al Mashad, was actually lying when he claimed to have been sexually abused by you?
I don't recall that.
Okay. sometime after the parishioners came to your support, after this was made public and McDonough addressed the parish, did it come to your attention that Al-Mashad wrote a letter of his own to the parishioners, telling him his version?
I know that AM distributed something in the parking lot.
Yes.
I remember because somebody told me about that.
Right.
I never read it, but I heard about it.
Are you aware that what he distributed was basically a letter that said, Kern abused me, and I learned from Kevin McDonough in the Archdiocese that from his file he had done it to others, going back to 1969?
See, I don't know about that part of it.
Okay. You don't know about that?
All I know is that he was circulating something, and but I never read it. And
That lawsuit got settled, didn't it? Did it not?
yes,
After it did, you were allowed to live at St. Paul's Seminary, weren't you, and take a sabbatical?
yes,
And it was St. Paul's Seminary where you had abused or engaged in that conduct with Al-Mashad or AM.
yes,
And after that, you were given a sabbatical with pay and benefits,
yes,
and continued full faculties to minister if you so chose, correct?
Well, I wasn't under. I think yes is the answer, but
Yeah.
I wasn't working anywhere.
Right.
I mean,
But you were free to do supply work.
oh, yes,
When you went to, you allowed to go to South America, I presume, on personal vacation? Or why'd you go to South America?
the reason I was told it's a great place to go. No, that's true.
Who told you that?
Greg no, not
Okay.
Greg Pisolano. Greg Robillard,
Okay.
who's now deceased, but he was with Cummings Engines. And but anyway,
Okay.
but he always knew it. Anyway, that's a long story.
So the Archbishop and the Archdiocese, you're still a priest under his control, and so you have to get permission to leave and do that, right? And you got
no. To travel?
Yes.
No, you can travel anywhere you want.
While you're on sabbatical,
Sure.
when you're not assigned,
What?
when you're not assigned to a parish.
Well, even if you're assigned to a parish, you don't get permission to go on a vacation. Priests just do that on their own, you know.
Were you still allowed to wear your collar at this time?
Yes.
Any restrictions imposed on you by the Archbishop or Father McDonough that you're to not have any contact with youth?
Now?
Yes.
Yes.
No, at 1993.
Oh, 93, no.
Yeah. Yeah.
No.
The first time restriction was imposed was 2002, wasn't it?
Yes.
And so I took one of my colleagues took your deposition in 1994, didn't he? You remember sitting for something like this?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. At some point in time, in 1995, you were appointed a temporary as temporary administrator at St. Dominic's in Northfield, were you not?
Yes.
And do you know why you were made a temporary administrator by the Archdiocese as opposed to associate or pastor?
Yes, I do know, because after the lawsuit with 15, I got I got a letter from Kevin McDonough saying that any future assignments would be pastor, administrator, parochial vicar, and maybe there's something else, but not a pastor is what's the point, you know.
And did he tell you that if you're an administrator, it's a lot easier to pull you out if there's a complaint or a problem, as opposed to if you're a pastor, it's more difficult?
It's taken for granted, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of understood.
Understood, right.
Yeah.
Right.
In 1995, you're assigned to St. Peter's in Forest Lake, correct? Oh, by the way, did they tell anybody at St. Dominic's in Northfield why you're being called temporary administrator versus pastor?
I don't know what they told the parish. You know, I wasn't part of that. You know.
What about the staff? Any of the staff know why that was so?
Well, I do know that what happened at a trustee meeting, and that was, I assumed I was going in there temporarily, but I wasn't sure. But that was kind of the hint that the personnel director told me by telephone. I was at the seminary then, you know, and because he said something like, well, don't pack too heavily, Jerry. You might not be there too long. But when I got down there, I got kind of the same hint from the deacon there, whoever he was. I forget his name. And but then the trustees, we had a trustee meeting, and at the trustee meeting, a woman, whatever her name, but she says, "What's this about a lawsuit?" You know, and then I said, "Call Kevin McDonough." So that's what I told her, and I didn't want to get into it, you know, with her, you know, that. And which we did not. So the trustee knew. The deacon, well, I think there was a letter sent to the parish, but I never read it, so I don't really know.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this is the lawsuit that
Yeah.
Kevin McDonough and Archbishop Roach had said you had been innocent of, having committed a claim of sexual abuse, right?
Well, whatever they said, you know, I wasn't.
And as temporary administrator, even though you're called that, you still enjoyed all the privileges and responsibilities of a pastor. You just weren't called a pastor, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then you were in 1995, and that means you were allowed to work with kids and do whatever you had done before with kids and all the other responsibilities with youth, right?
Yes. And
then you're in 1995 assigned to St. Peter's in Forest Lake, and there's a grade school there, right?
Yes.
And you worked were you administrator there?
No, parochial vicar.
Parochial vicar. So it gave them the same opportunity to remove you if they so chose, just not, as far as the people knew, you had all the privileges and rights of a pastor and responsibility.
Well, they knew I wasn't pastor.
What do they call you? Father?
Well, sure. Yeah.
So you basically operated as the priest at the parish, unrestricted and able to do whatever the fathers do in a parish, right?
Yes.
In and out of the grade school, administer the sacraments, hear confessions, and do the like.
Whatever.
Got it. In 1996, at St. Peter's in Forest Lake, has anybody told about any of the things that we've talked about here, about complaints of abuse, complaints concerning kids and the way you wrestled with them, or anything like that in the parish?
The parish was told, you know, something, and
by whom?
Kevin I mean,
What do you know they were told?
well, that's like in written form, for example. I don't know. I mean,
Well, in any form.
well, let's see. I can't remember this. Kevin came out to St. Peter's Church, and I forget what he all said, though. I mean, but he said something, and was it on Sunday? I forget. But the parish was informed. I forget all what was said, though. I mean, I don't know. You'd have to ask Kevin.
Were they informed that you had admitted to having touched the genitals of Al-Mashad under oath? Or any kid?
Well, they didn't speak like that. I mean,
Well, did they say that you had a history of sexual abuse or pose a danger of harm or give them any warning that you could hurt a kid?
no.
And in fact, in your deposition, you had admitted to having touched the genitals of him outside a swimsuit, had you not? Under oath. That is Al-Mashad.
Yeah. It's just that I thought of sexual abuse differently.
Yeah, well, you didn't see the sexual abuse, but you admitted having touched his genitals, right?
Well, just a brush. Yeah, but
In any case, the people at St. Peter's in Forest Lake didn't know that, right? And weren't told it. By you?
yeah.
Or anybody
no,
else, as far as you know,
As
correct?
far as I know. Yeah.
In 1969, Father McDonough, in 1996, after having been assigned to St. Peter's and Forest Lake in 95, did he engage you and have you go to St. John Vianney in some way? Do you know St. John Vianney? Were you sent there?
No.
Were you, it's also called the Andros Center. Did you have some involvement with them in 96?
No.
Okay. Do you recall having been sent to any place else in 1996?
96?
Yes.
Yes. I went
Where?
Philadelphia.
Okay, what for?
They just asked that I do an evaluation. Kevin did.
And you didn't know the reason? And you weren't told?
I assumed it was about this whole topic, you know.
Concerns about sexual conduct towards youth.
Mhm.
While a priest, right?
Yes.
Okay. And before you were sent there, what were you told about? Were you asked by Father McDonough? Was it McDonough that sent you there?
Yes.
Under the authority of the Archbishop?
Yes.
Okay. And how long were you there?
About a week, maybe.
And did you understand that the information they compiled would be shared with the Archdiocese officials?
Yes.
And did you ever hear or read what their findings were?
Well, I know they recommend it. Yeah,
I make the same objection as to
You
privilege.
have a continuing.
Thank you. It's a new facility, just for consistency. Go ahead now.
I'm tired.
Do you want me to repeat the question?
No, no, the findings you're talking
Yeah,
about.
the question is,
no.
did,
Yeah, no,
did
I got it, I think.
what were you told about the findings that they made?
Yeah. Somebody came out from the Archdiocese, not Kevin, a layman, chancellor or somebody. And then we got together, Dylan, or whatever his name was, and got together with a representative from there and myself, and they just said they thought it'd be good if I just got some therapy, you know.
Did you?
No.
And that was Fallon, wasn't it? Fallon, the
Yes.
chancellor then?
Yeah, yes,
Okay. And he was a non-cleric.
yes.
And were the parishioners told that you were going to Philadelphia for this evaluation?
I don't think so, but I don't know. You know, sometimes things happen when you're not there, you know.
Were the parishioners told that you were being pulled out of ministry temporarily because there were concerns about you being a risk to the children in the parish or a danger of any kind?
I don't think so.
The records reflect that on February 28, 2002, when Boston had exploded and the bishops meet for the Charter for Protection of Children, and there's all this going on in the public. Is it correct to say that at that time you were asked to resign in public ministry?
Yes.
And were you told that in effect because there was concern that your past could become known, and the Archdiocese didn't really want that made public?
Well, they didn't talk like that, the way you're
How do they talk?
insinuating.
Yeah.
You like to say things a certain way. What? Say the question. Make it shorter. You don't have to do it as a long.
Tell me what you were told then about why you were taken on a ministry, and the reasons you were given for taking you out of active ministry in 2002.
Because of the whole Boston thing, that it was, you know,
Scandal?
spreading across the country, and they just thought it'd be better if, you know, I no longer worked. And
Tell you it would look better to have you not active in a parish, right? Given your history.
well, they didn't use those words. Yeah,
Is that what was implied?
I don't know what was implied. I mean, I can't.
Well, you're the one that heard it. You're
Yeah,
the one that said it.
right.
And so they took you out for a reason, and they gave it to you.
Yeah.
And so it was clearly an attempt by them, was it not, to make
Yeah.
sure that what they had been known and documented about you and your history not be widely publicized, and the scandal would not be made worse, correct?
Mhm. Yes.
After your resignation, by the way, at the time of your resignation, what were the people told about the reasons for the resignation? Anything? Or just that you're resigning?
Well, see, I left. You're talking about Forest Lake.
2002. I'm talking about
Yeah,
2002.
well, I was at Forest Lake. You're
Yeah.
right. See, what happened is, right before that, right before that, so here's the resignation here. Right before that, I was told I had cancer, okay? And so, this happened right at the same time. And so, I forget how many days, it's a short period of time here. And so when I went to the University of Minnesota for surgery on my leg, that night at the hospital, I did not know where I was going to be sleeping, because I was to leave the parish And so I never returned to the parish. And all my stuff was there, of course, at the parish, you know. And so in terms of what they said to the parish, I think it's part of your question.
Yes. Yeah, because it sounds like it's an abrupt departure. You're just diagnosed with cancer, and you're being told that they have to remove you for the reasons you already discussed. So it's kind of an abrupt departure.
Right.
What was the reason given for your abrupt departure to the parish?
And I don't know that. I wasn't there, you know. Yeah.
After that resignation, have you done help out work and supply work at various places?
No.
Not at all?
Not at all.
Have you worn collar?
Nope. No.
In 2004, were you aware of whether or not any action was taken concerning you and your status as a cleric with the Vatican, and a letter having been sent to the congregation for the doctrine of the faith?
No.
Do you know anything about that?
No.
Has any effort ever been made to remove you from the clerical state by your superior and your boss, the Archbishop, currently presiding as Archbishop Neinstadt, or his predecessors?
No.
At some point in time, were you told that you were placed on monitoring by the Archdiocese and that you were to have a monitor?
Well, the Palms program, whatever it's called, I'm not sure of the title, you know. But yeah, this happened. I forget the year. But yeah, this guy comes out. It's a quarterly thing. Even though a couple of times it's been 7 months instead of 4 months, 3 months. You know, like when they changed personnel and that, and Kevin could not find somebody and all that. But it basically, you want to know what it says?
Well, let me ask you a question, and we'll. So at some point in time, you are informed by Kevin McDonough, under the authority of the Archbishop, that a decision had been made to put you into a program you called the Palms program.
Something like that.
Palms, P-O-M-S, right?
What is it?
Palms, P-O-M-S.
Or maybe.
Does that sound right?
Yes.
Okay.
Close.
And does that sound like that was about 2007 or 2008 in that time frame?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
About 7 years ago?
About.
Okay. And what were you told at that time as to why you were put into that program and required to comply with or participate in it? What do you remember about what they told you?
Well, they just said they're going to do it. I mean,
Going to do what?
this monitor thing, you know.
Okay.
And I mean, and we did it. I mean,
And did you have a monitor assigned you
yes,
by them?
by them,
And they selected the monitor?
yes.
And then how, if you have you been monitored? Tell us about what that has been and what has been done to monitor.
Yeah, well, the whole thing, everything about it, or?
Yeah, since you were put into this program, what?
Yeah, he comes out he's supposed to come quarterly. And
four times a year.
Four
and
times a year.
How often has it actually been?
Well, not always 4 times a year.
It's been less, hasn't it?
Yes. A couple of times, I think maybe like 7 months. And
The most has been 2 times a year, hasn't it?
No. I forget, Jeff. Pretty regular. I mean, but not perfect.
Not 4 times a year.
Yeah,
Okay.
and not always 4 times a year.
Right.
Yeah.
And so
yeah.
when you say it's the he, that's the monitor assigned you, and that person visits with you, correct?
Right.
And they visit with you where you're living,
Yes.
and you're being paid, correct? Your regular monthly and stipend and housing allowance, correct?
I'm retired.
Yeah, but you're being paid your retirement.
Well, pension.
When did you actually make a retirement? Well,
Right at that time,
2002?
2002.
Okay.
Yeah, right.
so you're being paid retirement. Are you paying any extra funds?
No, but
Just
just pension and my Social Security.
and housing?
No,
No housing?
no, I wish.
Okay. Have you heard reported publicly that some priests who have been accused of sexual abuse are getting paid extra money monthly beyond their retirement? Like Father Capone? Did you hear about that?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
But
Okay, but
Some-
you didn't receive any extra money.
not a penny.
Okay.
Yeah.
So tell me then, when the monitor would come to you, how long would be those meetings?
About an hour.
About an hour. Okay. And are you still in that program?
Yes.
And they'd ask you how you're doing, and they'd ask you if you're offending against any kids or doing any of the kinds of things that got you in trouble before, right?
Right.
And you'd say no, right?
Right.
Okay. Did they do anything else to interview the people around you or verify what you're telling them is true or not? That is the monitors.
Say that again.
When the monitor comes out and talks to
Yeah.
you and asks you, have you been doing any of these things that got you in trouble before, and you say no, do they check with anybody else to make sure you're telling the monitor the truth about what you're doing and not doing, such as those you live with, such as those you work with, such as those that know you, or anything like that?
Well, I don't know who they talk to. You
Okay.
know. I really don't.
As far as you know, they
As
don't
far
talk to
as I
anybody
know,
else.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just going to take a moment here.
Video record is 12:10 p.m.
You want to stretch for a second?
Back on the video record at 12:14.
Keep them down. Keep the exhibit down so they can see your face. Okay?
Oh,
Keep it right.
yeah.
No, you-
I can't have it.
just leave it.
I'm going to go back for a moment, Father, to the facility you're sent to in Philadelphia by the Archdiocese. I don't think you identified the facility. I think I have the name for it, but do you remember the name of it? Was it St. John Vianney?
Was that the name?
Okay,
I
but
forget.
in any case, you went to the facility, and you were sent to the facility in Philadelphia, correct?
Yes.
Yes? And you also knew that when you were sent there by the Archdiocese, that the Archdiocese would also have access to whatever information you gave them, whatever records were prepared, or whatever tests were done, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I'm now going to show you under the sealed record, pictures of John Doe 26. And you have Exhibit D and Exhibit C before you. And if we have stipulation that this can be a part of the sealed record along with the Doe exhibit,
So stipulated.
do we, counsel?
Yes.
Thank you. That means that this just it stays under an envelope, and we call it sealed, okay? To protect his privacy. Do you agree with that and understand that, Father?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Showing you pictures of him as a youth, exhibits C and D. You didn't recognize the name before, but do you recognize him now as have been one of the kids under your charge at Our Lady of Grace?
No,
Okay. Not familiar to you at all?
no.
At one point when I was asking you about engaging in sexual contact and making contact with the genitals of youth, you described wrestling, and at one point in time I've seen you describe that kind of wrestling as Italian wrestling. Is that what you used to call it? Italian wrestling?
No.
Where did that come from?
Well, I'm wondering the same question, really. And I think it's because I came back from Italy. I mean, I think that was the connection somewhat.
But you didn't call
And,
it to the kids, this is Italian
no.
wrestling. That wasn't your descriptor?
No.
Okay. Okay. Did you tell the Archdiocese that? When they confronted you with these issues, that it was innocent, I was just doing Italian wrestling?
I forget if I used that word.
I'm going to direct your attention back to Doe 5. Look back at the Doe list, and you'll see the name on Doe 5. Don't use the name, please. But you'll see that name there.
Yes.
Do you remember him?
I know who he is.
Okay.
And
You remember wrestling with him?
no,
Not at all?
not at all. I know not totally. And he's a man who we're related. My mother is
And so, in any case, I guess the first question is do you deny ever having engaged him in any kind of wrestling or inappropriate sexual contact at any time?
Yes.
I'm going to show you Exhibit 5, and this has been presented as a statement by him, written before he took his own life. He states the past will always haunt you. Its power makes you weak and frail. Thoughts of it will never escape you, for it covers your emotions with a veil. All you need is a moment's respite, but the chance will never arise, for the past is a powerful enemy, despite the fact it dwells inside. Take the chance to expel it, drive it away from your thoughts. Get it out in the open, for your future is in its grasp. Have you seen this before?
No.
Does it make you feel anything about or believe that you may have played some role in him having taken his own life?
No.
I think that's all I have, Father.
Yeah.
Father, you have a right to read the deposition before you sign it. I recommend that we do that in light of the fact that it's so long and involves such a history. So, will you take my recommendation and read the deposition and sign it after you've made any corrections, if there are any?
Yes.
off the video record at 12:21 p.m. Back on the video record.
Sorry,
at
just about
12:21
done.
p.m.
There was one guy we forgot to ask you about, and it's been written in there as John Doe 20. And while you would have been at St. Mark's, the question is do you recognize that name, John Doe 20, as having been one of the kids in the parish at St. Mark's?
No.
Okay. Do you have any memory or belief that you engaged in wrestling with him, genital contact, or sexual abuse of him?
No.
Do you deny that you did?
Yes.
Okay, that's all. Thanks.
Again, you'll read and sign, yes, Father?
Yes.
Off the video record at 12:22 p.m.